For almost around every 10 new mobile games trying to sell you something, there's like that one mobile game that just simply shows up and delivers. And luckily for us, June 2026 has actually brought quite a few. Hello friends, this is Mobo, and here are over 15 amazing free-to-play mobile games you must try. First of all, let me just say this is actually an honorable mention. It took a few extra days to land, but G.O.R.E finally came out to Android and iOS yesterday. And honestly, this one's been on a lot of people's radar for a while. So let's start with the fact that, first of all, it's not a free-to-play game at all. You will need a Crunchyroll membership. It is a third-person action slasher that, well, for better or worse, feels like it got teleported straight out of a PlayStation 2 era, where you're basically a walking tanks sort of character, just smashing down entire rooms with guns and this coffin behind you. A few hours in the game, it kind of gets repetitive, and what you want to do is basically finish it as fast as you can. The enemy variety is sort of mediocre, missions do blend a bit together, and the gameplay jank does show up, although fortunately the game is playable with a controller. Yet, if you miss that old school arcade slash and action energy, well yeah, there's something oddly lovable about the game as well. So, do I recommend it? Yeah, but definitely your choice. On the other hand, we've got the game Tomb Busters, and the game finally landed, sitting there with an overwhelmingly positive score in its current state. It took a couple years to come around, but it's well polished and, in my opinion, really worth the wait. So the game itself is as if someone mixed Phasmophobia with like a Chinese myth and like went all the way in survival co-op. You went up to 3 other players diving into tombs, packed with all sorts of traps, rituals, and the deeper you go, the uglier things get as well. Definitely one of those games where like half the fun comes from panicking and accidentally ruining the mission to get it with friends. 10 out of 10. It's a free game, hella fun with friends. RF Online Next looks like it's actually coming back with zero interest in playing small. So this is a massive sci-fi MMO third-person shooter. It's actually built around large-scale fiction warfare and MiG battles, including aerial combat, whereas instead of just locking you into one role, it lets you switch classes on the fly and turn the whole battlefield in your favor, depending on how skilled you are. Like for a minute, you're blasting from range, the next you're piloting a mech right in the middle of a 100-player conflict. Here's the thing. If it delivers on its scale, we think RF Online Next could easily become one of the biggest MMO launches of 2026, right next to behemoths like Warframe, specifically for players craving some good PvP and some nice, decent sci-fi. Check it out, it's actually coming out in about 2 weeks. On second hands, Off the Road finally landed, and it actually went bigger in every possible direction instead of just a reskin. That's right, Off the Road, the original game, already had that sandbox off-road freedom people loved, but this one is absolutely massive. Open roads, muddy mountain trails, deserts, oceans, highways, forests. Basically the kind of map where you stop following objectives after 10 minutes and just start driving somewhere random to see what happens. And the vehicle variety is ridiculous. Like 1 minute you're running a truck, the next you're flying fighter jets, and somehow it's still offline as well. Which honestly might just be the best part of a game this huge. The whole game's about 1 GB in total, and it does have in-app purchases. Highly recommended. Right now it's a solid 9 out of 10. On second hands, this thing absolutely did not spend years in development for nothing. Not one of those small races where you just drift in on a wall at 300 kilometers an hour and somehow still win kind of racing game, but a realistic sim. You see, the handling matters, cars feel heavy, corners punish bad timing, and once you start understanding the grip, the whole game suddenly feels super satisfying. For people who do love proper driving sim games, this is as far as it gets on Android and iOS. And visually, Unreal Engine is just ridiculous how well it's working. Racing Master is easily sitting near the top of mobile racing games right now. Coming up behind that at number 6 is Harry's Mystery, which is clearly trying to live in that Hogwarts Legacy sort of vibe, but for mobile space, except it sort of shows up like the budget cousin who got the invitation but not the graphics card. To be fair, there's a pretty decent sandbox in the game. You've got broom flying, spell experimentation and exploration that actually encourages messing around, but compared to Hogwarts Legacy, of course, it feels more like a wizardry sim. It's not trying to be Hogwarts is what I'm saying, but it is definitely standing in the same hallway, wearing a similar robe and hoping nobody asks question. It's an offline game, but 500 megabytes in total. Number 7, Ungodly is in fact one of the oldest in line to be making its way around Android and iOS. It is legit one of the more interesting MMORPGs arriving in the next few weeks. Ungodly, in fact, is actually coming from the same creator behind Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It is set in this dying world where an unstoppable force known as the Devouring is consuming everything in its path. And instead of relying on idle mechanics, well, obviously as an MMO, Ungodly focuses on active combat. The atmosphere, the monster design, art direction, all of it does give it a pretty unique identity as well. We think it is definitely one to keep in mind for the coming days. So far we can play the beta, it's about 4 gigabytes in total.
Rule the skies, and every decision matters.
With that being said, number 8 we've got Dragonfire, which is, I think I've mentioned the game maybe once before. It is exactly what I'd expect from a Game of Thrones 4X game. Considering this time you're actually showing up during the Targaryen War, when dragons are still everywhere and nobody can agree who should actually sit on the Iron Throne. Well, like I said, it's a 4X strategy game, so obviously you're building, gathering armies, forming alliance, expanding and stuff while trying not to get cooked by stronger players. The main attraction, of course, is the dragons themselves. They actually play a major role in both combat and progression. So yeah, if you have actually spent years playing mobile kingdom builders, well, this one's pretty much aimed directly at you. Sound of Heroes, I've already mentioned the game once. It sort of feels like the exact opposite of what most mobile games are trying to do right now, where there's no world-ending thread every 5 minutes, no energy bars, no endless pop-ups just begging for your wallet. You're just riding through an open world, meeting people, taking part in daily life stuff, and slowly uncovering a bigger mystery hiding underneath all of the adventure. The game reviews so far have been pretty positive, especially from horse fans who appreciate the relaxing atmosphere and the story-driven approach of the game, although some players feel the pacing can be a little slow. Yeah, if you are actually after something cozy instead of chaotic, this one's got a pretty unique charm. It is free for a couple of chapters, and the next chapters are coming. They're gonna be paid.
What?
Genesis War got many strategy fans actually talking for a reason. See, on the surface it's a pretty classic tactical RPG, but once you get into it, the positioning, the terrain mechanics, the team building, giant MiG battles all give it a lot more depth than your average auto battle sort of gacha. Yeah, a lot of players seem to agree the PvP and campaign are genuinely strong, especially if you're into Fire Emblem style sort of strategy. But that being said, it's not all sunshine, of course. The launch has been pretty rough with crashes, bugs, and performance complaints. It has gone through some good patches. The game's in a much better place right now. Still, if you were actually looking for a new tactical RPG to sink your teeth into for many days, Genesis War might be one of the better ones released this year. Just maybe, well, keep your expectations checked. Well, here's the thing, guys. Motu Skeletor is another straightforward, endless running game where you're just constantly running and triggering abilities as speed slowly ramps up. Well, technically, this old game's charm is that you get to play as the Skeletor and unlock other characters as well, while the core loop never really changes. It's very standard runner structure. You go run after run, try to survive longer, hit a higher score, and slowly stack upgrades and unlocks that make future runs smoother. The ability and character effects add a little bit of flavor, but at its core, like I said, it's a pretty simple reflex-based type of running game. So if you've actually been around here for the past 6 months per se, you know pretty well we've included Last Hunter K in at least 3 or 4 videos, even more. Not on the list though. Whether if you are new to it or not, the fine developers behind this hidden gem just announced a huge update, and this new season in fact expands the live service with more bosses, more co-op content, gear, skins, events, yet the main appeal is still the great combat itself. It's got that same one mistake you're folded instantly energy and that legit Souls-like combat with a nice little science fiction sort of cyberpunk twist. Check it out in case you missed it. This game is free and it's about 2 gigabytes in total.
And if you're looking for the vaults,
Borderlands Mobile suddenly showed up with no big hype cycles, no long runway. It's just now suddenly sitting on the Apple Store as well. And if you know Borderlands, well, you already know the loop. It's that shoot, explode, loot, upgrade, repeat cycle turned into some pure adrenaline farming and a lot of MMO. Right now it's in its test phase vibe and it's very stripped down compared to the mainline games. It does feel like Borderlands in motion but tuned for quick sessions and mobile grind energy. Check it out in case you missed it. The game's about 3 GB in size. With that being said, we've got UFL Football Game 2026, which finally made the jump to mobile, and it's really chasing that full console crowd instead of the fast arcade stuff most mobile games lean into now. So the whole thing clearly wants to compete with the big football names already on mobile, and honestly the presentation's pretty clean as well. Playing online matches and live events tied to real football seasons are sort of like the cherry on top. If you like slower, more tactical football games with real teams and some polished visuals, this will definitely grab you fast. I mean, come on, it's been out for just a few days and already downloaded nearly 1 million times. Mutant Lands is basically another Spider Hero game, except this time, Spider-Man lost all legal restrictions and also grew tentacles for some reason. I mean, it's an open world game, it's an indie open world action adventure when there is a full mutant superhero with absurd powers. It's not as well made as the Spider Hero games. There's mission, there's a lot of them, there's a good amount of action and a good pull, but the real fun is just turning the entire map into a playground of bad decisions. The combat's pretty messy, it's built around juggling enemies like ragdolls, and for like just 300 megabytes as an offline game, it's pure charm with legitimately all Spider-Man franchise's villains to pick up and actually play with.
Defenders 3 is a unique fusion of collectible strategy.
On another hand, with Defenders 3, which is a tower defense and collectible card game thrown in the same blender, and it actually works ridiculously well. Where you're constantly building defenses, there's over 50 different towers and you gotta swap heroes and spells on the fly to survive bigger waves. And unlike a lot of mobile tower defense games that eventually become autoplay wallpaper at some point, this one actually wants you thinking about positioning, timing, and synergies during the fights. There's multiple biomes, several game modes, and over 25 bosses. It's a free game and will need about 400 megabytes in total. With that being said, Soul Awakening World is actually the first open world MMORPG built around the Soul universe. Definitely not the best, not even a proper one to be frank, but it's an attempt and a lot of folk demanded it. So it's primarily aimed at fans of the anime and the novels. It's got a pretty big world to explore with a bunch of bosses, hidden areas, familiar characters, and well, unlike a lot of MMOs, combat seems to be the focus. Not that it's, smooth or actually enjoyable though. But if you've been waiting for a Soul game in an MMORPG form, well, this is probably for you. Otherwise, definitely skip. On another hand, Sword Staff, which we didn't really include in our list, but has been out for a while now, is one of those idle RPGs that's trying to mix cozy life sim with like a traditional RPG setup. It's got auto combat, class switching, guild content, offline rewards, and a pretty polished anime style world overall. But the big hook is being able to swap roles freely instead of just locking into one build. So the pacing feels more flexible than the usual idle grinders. Still, however, very menu heavy and progression focused at its core. There's like enough exploration, bosses, and social stuff packed in to keep it from feeling like sort of brainless. Pretty good game.